I thought telling my dad I was pregnant would be hard, but normal. He froze. Then asked, who's the father? Something felt off. I said, it's complicated. His voice dropped, don't lie to me. My stomach twisted. Because the name I couldn't say was someone he trusted. The truth was, I almost said it right there. It was sitting in my throat, heavy, like if I forced it out, everything in that room would crack open at once. The kitchen felt smaller than it ever had. Same table. Same overhead light. Same quiet hum of the fridge. But nothing felt the same. My dad didn't blink. Who is he, Marin? His voice wasn't loud. That's what made it worse. I shook my head. It's not what you think. He leaned back slowly, like he'd already made up his mind. That's exactly what people say when it is what I think. I didn't plan this, I said, and I hated how weak it sounded. You didn't plan it, he repeated. So what, you just made a mistake and now you can't even say his name? It's not like that. Then what is it like? He leaned forward, eyes locked on mine. Say his name. I couldn't. Not because I didn't know it. Because I knew exactly what it would do. The silence stretched too long. And I saw it happen the moment he stopped waiting for an answer and started deciding what kind of person I was. You're not going to tell me, he said flatly. I didn't move. I didn't raise you like this. That landed deeper than anything else. I know, I said quietly. Clearly you don't. He stood up, grabbed his keys, and didn't even look at me again. If this is how you're going to live your life, then you don't need me pretending it's okay. I wasn't asking you to pretend. No, he said, already heading for the door. You're asking me to ignore it. I'm asking you to listen. He stopped. Just for a second. Then he said something that stayed with me longer than anything else. There's nothing to listen to when you won't even tell the truth. And then he walked out. No shouting. No slammed door. Just gone. And I sat there, still holding my glass, staring at the empty chair across from me like something might rewind if I didn't move. But I didn't go after him. Because I knew if I followed him and said the name, I wouldn't just lose him. I'd destroy something bigger. So I let him believe the easier version. That I'd been reckless. That I'd made some random mistake with some guy I couldn't even explain. It was easier for him to hate that version of me. And easier than watching him realize the truth. By the next morning, I was blocked. No message. No warning. Just gone. I tried calling. Straight to voicemail. Texted. Nothing delivered. Checked everything else. Same thing. Like I'd been erased overnight. My Aunt Sharon sent me one message later that day. I heard what happened. I'm really disappointed in you. That was it. No questions. No, are you okay? No curiosity about the truth. And I didn't correct her. I could have. I could have said everything. But every time I even thought about saying his name out loud, I felt sick. Because it wasn't just complicated. It was ugly. And once it was out, there was no putting it back. So I stayed quiet. I went to work like nothing had happened. Answered emails. Took calls. Smiled when I needed to. Normal things. Routine things. But everything felt slightly off. Like I was living a version of my life that didn't belong to me anymore. The only time it felt real was at night. When everything got quiet. That's when my mind went back to him. Daniel. I didn't notice when it stopped being harmless. There wasn't a moment where we crossed a clear line. It just shifted. At first, he was just someone who showed up around my dad's projects. Not constantly. Just enough that you'd recognize him. Enough that he felt familiar. Quiet. Calm. The kind of person who didn't talk unless he had something worth saying. The first real conversation we had was in the driveway. You work late, he said. It wasn't even a question. Yeah, I said. Logistics. Nothing ever runs on time. He nodded. Same. Everything looks simple until it isn't. That should have been nothing. But it wasn't. Because he didn't say it like small talk. He said it like he understood something about me without asking. After that, we talked more. Not in obvious ways. Not in ways that would have raised questions. Just more. Small conversations turned into longer ones. Standing outside turned into sitting on the back steps. Casual turned into personal without either of us pointing it out. And that was the problem. It didn't feel wrong. It felt easy. Too easy. He listened in a way most people don't. Didn't interrupt. Didn't try to fix things. Just stayed present. And I didn't realize how much I needed that until I had it. There was a point where I stopped mentioning other people around him. Stopped talking about dating. Stopped saying anything that would remind either of us where the line was supposed to be. We didn't say it out loud. We just avoided it. The night everything changed wasn't dramatic. No big moment. My dad wasn't home. I had just gotten back from work. He was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter like it was normal for him to still be there. We started talking like usual. But something felt different. Quieter. Heavier. I feel like my whole life's already decided for me, I said at one point. Like I'm following something I didn't choose. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, so stop. I let out a small laugh. It's not that simple. He looked at me. It never is. Silence. And then he stepped closer. I should have walked away. I knew that. But I didn't move. That's the part 1 replay. Not what happened after. Just that moment. Where I could have stopped it. But I didn't. After that, we pretended it didn't happen. At least at first. Then it happened again. And again. Not often. Just enough. We told ourselves it didn't mean anything. That it was temporary. That we'd stop. We didn't. It became something we kept separate from everything else. No messages. No evidence. Just moments. And the worst part is, it didn't feel wrong when I was in it. It felt quiet. Like stepping into a version of my life where nothing else existed. Until I was alone again. Then it hit. Who he was. What it meant. What would happen if anyone found out. There were nights I told myself I'd end it. That the next time I saw him, I'd say something. But I never did. Because he never pushed. Never pressured. And somehow that made it worse. It felt like my choice. Even when it wasn't that simple. The day I found out I was pregnant, I sat on the bathroom floor for almost an hour. Just staring at the test. Waiting for it to change. It didn't. So I called him. We met that night in a parking lot behind a closed coffee shop. I told him. I'm pregnant. He didn't react the way I expected. No panic. No anger. Just quiet. Are you sure? He asked. That hurt more than anything else. Yes, I said. He nodded slowly. What are you going to do? Not we. You. And everything shifted in that moment. I don't know, I said. That's why I called you. He looked away. You need to figure out what you want. That's it? I asked. What do you want me to say? Something that makes it feel like this isn't just my problem. He didn't hesitate this time. It kind of is. That was the moment I lost him. Not physically. Emotionally. And I stood there, realizing I had been alone in this longer than I thought. The first appointment I went to alone felt like I had walked into someone else's life. Couples sat together, leaning into each other, whispering, sharing phones, smiling at something only they understood. I sat by myself, hands folded in my lap, staring at the floor like if I didn't make eye contact, no one would notice I didn't belong there. When they called my name, I almost didn't stand up. I laid back on the exam table, staring at the ceiling while the technician adjusted the screen beside me. You ready? She asked. I nodded, even though I wasn't. She moved the wand slowly, eyes focused on the monitor before mine even shifted toward it. Then she smiled. There it is. I turned my head. A small shape. Flickering. Real. Not a thought. Not a mistake. Not something I could undo. Do you want to hear the heartbeat? I hesitated. Then nodded again. The sound filled the room. Fast. Steady. Alive. And something in me cracked. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet tears sliding down the sides of my face into my hair while I stared at the screen, realizing this wasn't just happening to me. This was happening. Period. When it was over, she handed me a printed image like it was something joyful. Congratulations, she said. I said thank you. I don't even know why. I walked out to my car and sat there for a long time, the photo in my hand, staring at something that already felt like it mattered more than everything I'd lost. Because by then, I had lost everything. My dad was still gone. Every call blocked. Every message unanswered. At some point, it stopped feeling like anger. And started feeling like I had been erased. Like I never existed in his life to begin with. Work became the only place I could pretend I was still normal. I showed up. Did what I needed to do. Smiled when someone made a joke. No one there knew. And I didn't tell them. Because saying it out loud made it real in a way I wasn't ready for. But nights were different. Nights were where everything came back. I'd sit on the edge of my bed, phone in my hand, staring at Daniel's name like if I waited long enough, he'd fix it. At first, he answered. Short messages. You okay? You seen a doctor yet? No emotion. No wait. Just enough to remind me he existed. I tried to keep the conversation going. Tried to make him stay in it. But every reply felt like he was already halfway gone. Then one night, I sent a message. I heard the heartbeat today. No response. I waited. Checked my phone again. Still nothing. The message showed delivered. Read. But nothing came back. That was the moment I understood. Not slowly. Not over time. All at once. He wasn't just stepping back. He was choosing to disappear. After that, the messages stopped completely. No explanation. No closure. Nothing. And for a while, that silence felt louder than anything he could have said. There were nights I almost drove to find him. Not to fight. Just to make him look at me and admit what this was. But I didn't. Because I already knew what I'd see. The same look from that parking lot. Detached. Done. So I stopped reaching out. Not all at once. Just less. Until one day I realized I hadn't thought about texting him at all. That was worse. Because it meant I was starting to accept it. Accept that there was never a we. Just me. And the baby. The pregnancy itself wasn't hard in the way people expect. It was the quiet that got to me. Doing everything alone. Appointments. Decisions. Walking through stores filled with things I didn't understand yet. There was one moment I still think about. I was standing in a baby aisle, holding this tiny pair of socks. And I just froze. Because they were so small. So real. And there was no one next to me to laugh about it. No one to say, we're actually doing this. Just me. Holding proof that everything had already changed. I put them back and walked out. It took me weeks before I went back again. By 6 months, I had built something that looked like stability. Work. Home. Sleep. Repeat. No expectations. No waiting. No hoping. Daniel became something that existed in the past. Even though the consequence of him was very much present. And strangely, that helped. Because it made things clearer. There was no confusion anymore. No what if. Just reality. The day I went into labor, it wasn't dramatic. No chaos. No panic. Just a quiet understanding that it was time. I drove myself to the hospital. Checked in alone. Answered questions alone. Signed everything alone. There was a moment, sitting in that hospital bed, where it almost hit me again. Because this was supposed to be shared. This was supposed to matter to someone else. And it didn't. But when she was finally there, everything shifted. Not in a perfect way. Not like everything suddenly made sense. But enough. I held her and just stared. And for the first time in months, something felt steady. This was real. This was mine. Not in a possessive way. In a grounding way. Like no matter what else fell apart. This stayed. I named her Lila. I don't know why that name. It just felt right. Like something soft after everything hard. The first night in the hospital, I barely slept. Not because she cried. Because I kept waking up, checking if she was still there. Like part of me still expected everything to disappear. But it didn't. She stayed. And when we went home, it felt like I wasn't just surviving something anymore. I was building something. Even if it started messy. Even if it came from something I wish never happened. It was still real. And for the first time, that felt like enough. Until a week later, I saw something I wasn't supposed to. I was driving back from the grocery store, stopped at a light, barely paying attention. And then I looked up. And saw him. Daniel. Across the street. Talking to someone outside a job site. Wearing the same calm expression. Same posture. Like nothing had changed. Like nothing had happened. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Because he wasn't gone. He hadn't disappeared. He was still here. Still working. Still living his life like none of this existed. Like I didn't exist. Like she didn't exist. The light turned green. Cars started moving. And I just sat there for a second longer than I should have. Watching him. Realizing something that hit harder than anything before it. He didn't leave. He just left me. The knock came in the middle of the afternoon. Lila had just fallen asleep on my chest after one of those long, restless stretches where nothing seemed to calm her. I was standing in the living room, barely breathing, afraid even shifting would wake her. Then the knock came again. Steady. Not loud. I remember thinking it was probably a delivery. I adjusted her carefully and walked to the door, already half distracted, already planning how fast I could grab whatever it was and get back before she woke up. I opened it without checking. And everything in me went still. My dad stood there. For a second, I didn't recognize him, not because he looked completely different, but because something about him felt smaller. Like the version of him I knew had been worn down. His eyes didn't meet mine right away. They moved past me. To her. And something in his face shifted. Not dramatic. Just softer. Neither of us spoke. Lila made a small sound in my arms, and that broke whatever silence we were stuck in. Is that he started, then stopped himself. I didn't answer. He swallowed, then asked quietly, can I come in? I hesitated. Because letting him in felt like opening something I wasn't sure I could control. But I stepped back anyway. He walked in slowly, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to be there. His eyes moved around the apartment, quick, subtle, taking everything in. The small space. The things scattered around. The reality of it. Then his focus went back to her. Can I hold her? He asked. His voice was careful. I nodded. I handed her over slowly, watching his hands more than anything. Making sure he held her right. He did. He held her like she was something fragile and unfamiliar. And then he sat down. No questions. No comments. Just sat there, looking at her. I stayed standing for a while before sitting across from him. Minutes passed. The only sound was her breathing. And something about that silence felt heavier than anything we'd said before. Because it wasn't just quiet. It was everything we hadn't dealt with sitting there between us. Finally, he spoke. She looks like you. I swallowed. I don't remember that. I do. That was it. No emotion attached. Just a memory. Then, after a while, he asked again. Who's the father? But this time, it sounded different. Not accusing. Not angry. Just needing to know. My chest tightened instantly. Because this was the moment I had avoided since that night at the table. I could still lie. Still keep it simple. Still protect what was left. But looking at him sitting there, holding her like he didn't even recognize his own life anymore. I couldn't do it again. I didn't tell you before, I said slowly, because I knew how it would sound. He didn't respond. Just waited. I forced the words out before I could stop myself. It's Daniel. The name dropped between us. Heavy. Final. For a second, nothing happened. No reaction. Then I saw it. Not anger. Not shock. Recognition. Slow. Painfully slow. Like everything in his head was rearranging itself around that one word. Daniel, he repeated. Quiet. Like he didn't trust what he'd just heard. I nodded. His grip on Lila tightened slightly. Not enough to hurt. Just enough to show something inside him had shifted. He's been in my house, he said. I didn't answer. He's been around us. Still quiet. Still controlled. Then he looked at me. And this time, there was something else there. Not just hurt. Betrayal. I trusted him around you. That one hit. Hard. Because it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about everything that led up to this. Since when, he asked. I swallowed. Almost a year. He leaned back slightly, like the number physically pushed him. A year. I could see it happening. Every memory replaying in his head. Every time Daniel had been there. Every moment he hadn't questioned anything. I didn't tell you because I started. Because you knew, he cut in. I stopped. Because you knew exactly what this was. Silence. He looked down at Lila again. And something shifted in his expression. Not anger. Something heavier. I threw you out, he said quietly. I didn't respond. I didn't even ask you why you wouldn't say his name. That one stayed in the air longer than anything else. Because it was true. He hadn't asked. And I hadn't told him. We had both made our decisions that night. And this was where they led. After a long moment, he stood up carefully and handed Lila back to me. His hands lingered for just a second, like he wasn't ready to let go. Then he stepped back. I need to go, he said. No anger. No resolution. Just that. He walked to the door. Paused. Like he might say something else. Then didn't. And left. And this time. I didn't try to stop him. Because now there was nothing left to hide. He knew. And somehow, that made everything feel heavier. And clearer at the same time. After he left, the apartment didn't feel empty. It felt exposed. Like everything I had been holding in for months was finally out, and now there was nothing left to hide behind. I sat there with Lila in my arms, staring at the door long after it closed, replaying everything. The way he said Daniel's name. The way he didn't yell. The way he said, I trusted him around you. That line stayed. Because it wasn't just anger. It was something deeper. And for the first time, I didn't know who he was more upset with. Me. Him. Or himself. The first message came 2 days later. How is she? I read it 3 times. Not, how are you? Not, we need to talk. Just that. She's good, I replied. Sleeping more now. No response. Then later that night. Does she need anything? I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was so him. Avoid everything real. Handle everything practical. I typed a longer message. Deleted it. Typed another. Deleted that too. Then just said, we're okay. That became our rhythm. Short messages. Careful words. Nothing about Daniel. Nothing about the past. Like we were both silently agreeing not to touch the part that would break everything again. Weeks passed. Then he started showing up. Not often. Not regularly. Just, sometimes. Always the same way. A knock. A pause. Him standing there like he wasn't sure if he still had the right. And every time, I stepped back and let him in. He'd hold Lila. Sit quietly. Ask small questions. You getting sleep? She eating okay? Nothing deeper. But I could see it. The way he watched her. The way he stayed longer each time. Like he was trying to find his place again without asking for it. And I didn't stop him. Because despite everything, I wanted him there. Not for me. For her. There was one moment I didn't expect. He was sitting on the couch, holding her while she slept, just staring at her face like he was trying to memorize it. And he said, quietly, I should have asked you. I looked at him. What? That night, he said. I should have asked why you wouldn't say his name. I didn't answer right away. Because there wasn't a simple response to that. I wouldn't have told you, I said finally. He nodded slowly. I know. And that was it. No argument. No blame. Just truth. As for Daniel, I saw him again. Not up close. Not directly. Just enough. Passing by a job site. Talking to someone like nothing had changed. Still working. Still living his life like there wasn't a version of it that included me, or her. And that's when it really settled. He didn't leave town. He didn't disappear. He didn't lose anything. He just walked away. From me. From her. From everything. And no one held him accountable for it. No one knew. Except me. And my dad. And maybe that's the part that stayed with me the most. Not the betrayal. Not even the silence. Just how easy it was for him to keep going. Like we never existed. But here's the thing. He lost something. Just not in a way anyone else could see. Because every time I look at Lila, I don't see him. I see what I chose to keep. What I chose to build. Without him. And my dad. He didn't come back all at once. He didn't apologize. He didn't say anything dramatic. But he showed up. Again. And again. And again. And maybe that's his version of trying. Maybe that's all he knows how to do. He sits with her longer now. Talks a little more. Still avoids the past. But sometimes, I catch him looking at me like he's about to say something. And then he doesn't. And I don't push it. Because right now, this is steady. Not perfect. Not fixed. But steady. And after everything that happened, that feels like more than I expected. I think about that night at the table sometimes. About how everything could have gone differently if I had just said the truth. If I had forced it out before everything broke. But I also know, there's no version of this where no one gets hurt. No version where it ends clean. So maybe this was always how it was going to be. Messy. Complicated. Real. He lost nothing. My dad lost trust. And I lost the version of my life that made sense. But I didn't lose everything. Because now it's just me and her. And something that feels like a second chance, even if it's incomplete. And I'm still standing in it. So I guess I'm asking, was I wrong for staying quiet, even if it meant letting my own father believe the worst about me?